Horry County. We're excited. This is our 43rd episode. We didn't even celebrate really that we've done 40 episodes. And we've missed quite a travel and family emergencies and health and other things. But anyway, we got a packed hour today because there's all kind of things happening here in Horry County. But before we get started there, for those of you who are just joining us and maybe don't know who we are, I'm Shannon Grady, and this is my co-host,
John Cummings. Good morning.
And John and I were just chatting before we got started. We're talking about kind of a new sensation that's been taking the YouTube airways, if you will, by storm for the last year. Mr. Oliver Anthony, and he has got a new song just came out like 6 days ago. Everybody I think is familiar with his song. He did Rich Man North of Richmond. That's a pretty good one. He's got another one called I Want to Go Home. So if you haven't listened to this fella, I'm gonna quickly play. I don't know if you can hear it or not. We were discussing whether you could see it, but go look this guy up.
Face. Yeah, everybody knows who he is now.
Yeah, and he is really like a folk song singer and just fantastic guy. And John and I were just discussing that he's not taking a political side, but if you listen to the words, it's pretty clear he's not not a Democrat. I'm not saying he's a Republican. He very well could be a libertarian. He just isn't happy with anybody, and I haven't had a chance to listen to him. Go check him out. Oliver Anthony, amazing guy. And I think go ahead, John.
He's a throwback, is what he is. A lot of players just used to get up there and you play the guitar and sing like he does, and he's got some good songs. And that first song, Rich Man North of Richmond, that struck a chord with a lot of people. And he's right. He comes out and says, "Look, I'm not. It's not Republican. It's not Democrat. He doesn't like the hierarchy. He doesn't like the elite." And he makes it very clear that, everybody's included in that. We, the people, have gotten, I'll be nice, overlooked. And one of the things I think that really created somewhat of a stir was that for some reason, the RNC used his song at the debate. And he was not happy about that. I don't think he's the type of guy that's going to sue or anything. He doesn't strike me as that type. But he wasn't happy about it. And I think he got to make more of a point with the fact that he's against the establishment by them using the song. It got him even a bigger platform. So he's an anti-establishment guy, and there's more and more and more of that around. So he hit it at the right time, and that song just took off, and good for him.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting that he was offered like $8 million if he would go on the road and do like a traveling concert, with some group manager, and he said, "Nope, not doing it." And John Rich kind of came out and said, "Leave this guy alone, quit harassing him." So good on him. But anyway, we need guys like that. We need people that are willing to, whether it's sing, talk, whatever, do what we're doing, show up at these meetings like last night, board meeting. And if you weren't aware, last night was Horry County School Board's meeting. And the ACLU, along with an LGBTQ plus dash divided by whatever it is, group showed up. And their primary complaint was that we are banning books here in Horry County. And that's our Liberty leader here in Horry County, David Warner, who to his credit, he has located some books that I don't think should be allowed to be seen by our kids. And some of the books have been removed and put in places where they're more appropriate. Some of them have just been removed. Sense of what I think of as book banning, which is where you go out there and you burn them and nobody gets to read them. It's basically just been noted that, look, this is not age appropriate. So we're not going to let our first, second, third, fourth, fifth graders, whatever, have access to these types of materials. And so I think what essentially happened is that we had a group of people show up there to push back against the ACLU, and I understand the overflow room was packed. So I think the talking point always is, John, that, well, this is a small group, like we, the Christians, we're small. It's okay to have these books and all of this material available to our kids. But what do you think, John? Are we a small group?
I think this might be
the minority.
I think this might be the most inclusive group that there is in the nation. If you go around and you poll parents, I don't care what their religious background is, I don't care what their race, ethnicity, I don't care who they are. They all, as a to a parent, say there's no place for that stuff in the school. There just isn't. If you can try to ban these things at the state level. They, the thing that we always allow the left to do is we allow them to basically set the parameters of the conversation. So right away, when you put on the news, it's about book banning. It's not about book banning. It's about taking inappropriate books out of schools so school children don't get to see them. Period. I don't think any of this should be discussed until you're in high school. Period.
Yeah.
High school. That's it. And even then, there should be parameters about it, because the real tell here is that the left thinks, and Joe Biden has said this, that children are our children. Not, they don't belong to the parents, they belong to everybody. No, 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 no. That's not how this works. All right. Parents and children, your own children. The government wants to control everything. That's who these people are. And they get to set the parameters of the discussion by using the complicit media. They call it book banning. If you come out and say, look, I don't think these books belong, in front of 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, all of a sudden you're a homophobe, you're a transphobe, you're everything. They get to set that every time. And we could talk about any story you want to talk about. The complicit media and the left gets to set the tone in the story. We're not transphobes. We're not homophobes. We're not anything. We just don't think that pornography should be in a classroom. It's as simple as that. And if you see some of these books, and they're inappropriate for kids that are 15. I think that's just
Right.
what I believe. I think it goes a lot further than that. And they say, yeah, but it's a cartoon and it's done in a soft way. And you know what? That doesn't fly. I don't know if you remember this, back in the 70s, there was an X-rated cartoon called Fritz the Cat that came out in the movies. And it was filthy. I mean, it was X-rated, deserved an X rating. It was a cartoon. And guess what? I wouldn't show that in a high school.
Right.
But and you can't get away with saying, well, it's a cartoon. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That stuff does not belong in front of children, period. I don't care what the topic is. And here's the other tell. It's not about heterosexual sex.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. If you look at the books we're looking at, none of them talk about parenting. They don't talk about family. They don't talk about any of that. It's always, we'll call it non-traditional sex. So
Yes.
why does this need to be included in the discussion? And finally, and I'll get off my rant. Here's the big part that never comes up, and this is something that we, as concerned parents, not just conservatives, because it's not just conservatives, we as concerned parents, what we have to push is that our education system is broken. It's
Yes.
broken. Our kids are not learning. And you're going to come in and say, okay, we need to teach them all of this stuff, CRT, the critical race theory. We need to teach them all this new math. And they will, believe me, they weave the critical race theory into math problems, for God's sakes. And guess what? They're not learning what they need to learn to succeed. So it's a double-edged sword. You're teaching them all of this nonsense. And in addition to that, you're not preparing them for a successful life, because they're missing the boat on all the classics. And I tell you, if there was a way you could separate school systems, and you had parents who could choose, say, hey, we're going to send our kids to this school, and this is what they teach, and make it all the classics and get rid of all this nonsense, the kids in that school would far outperform the other kids that weren't involved in that school. They'd far outperform them in their lives. Trust me.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And Elizabeth here makes a great point that every 5 years these books come back up for review. So it's not like they're, again, the idea of banning is where the government comes in, they take all these books, they throw them into a giant bonfire and they burn them and nobody gets to read them. That is not what has happened. These books are just placed either in reserve area that is, for kids that are not, K through 5. But I agree with you, John. A lot of these books I don't think should even be in the high school library. So it is interesting that you make a valid point that the sex and the things that we see in these books are not traditional; they're non-traditional acts, and it really, if it's not taught in a biology course, I just don't think it's something that needs to be in our schools and be taught. But so you had this large group gathering last night, and their talking points are always that we are the minority. There's not many of us, but I think last night we kind of proved them wrong. That hey, it is we are a large number, as John said, and it's not even that. I mean, look at what happened in Virginia when the school boards were pushing back and banning people from coming into the meetings. And, then we got put on the domestic terrorist list because, how dare we go and speak up for our kids? It's appalling that these folks aren't getting the message. Leave our kids leave our kids alone. It's a pretty simple, straightforward approach. If you want to continue to try to attack our children and go after our kids, then you're going to see American mamas and dads stand up, grandpas and grandpas say, heck no, we're not going to let this happen. And that's going to be the downfall of those on the left. Now, as if what happened last night at the school board meeting wasn't enough of a red flag to say, hey, we got a problem here. We got folks pushing a very strong leftist agenda here in Horry County. If you know anything about the Myrtle Beach area, you know that down in Myrtle Beach on the Grand Strand, there's an organization there called Ground Zero. Now, it's a Christian organization for, I know it's been there, I think 12 years, but it's been around functioning for about 15 years. And they have a 20-year lease with the state, with the city of Myrtle Beach. And since that time, they've done about $1 million worth of updates to that building. I've been in there. It was the old theater. We actually had one of our meetings there. So they've done a tremendous amount of work. Well, now it looks like the city would really like to have that property back so they can add it into their whole refurbishment that they're doing. So rather than try to approach this guy in a diplomatic way and say, look, Scott, let's sit down, let's talk about what we can do. Let's give you a 9 months to get ready to give you $1 million back because that's what you put into it that you can then use to go find a different facility. No, instead they use some underhanded tricks, and they have these groups that were there last night come out and say, listen, this is not an inclusive organization. People coming in there, if they don't fit into their little box of whatever. Well, I'm just going to pull up for you and read real quickly. If you go to their page, Ground Zero, it's online. I'm not, this is nothing I'm pulling out of my head. It says the following. Step 1, please read our statement of faith and biblical position to ensure you agree with what we believe, social topics. If you don't agree with us, that's okay. We still love you, and you're welcome to participate in everything Ground Zero has to offer. This is your place, even if we disagree. Wow. The only thing they say is that if you want to be a leader, and how is that, if you have a corporation, Google, Apple, Amazon, whatever, and you have a particular philosophy that you want to have taught among the people, you're going to make sure that the leadership are all on the same page. Now, you may have people that work underneath you that don't agree in leadership. They're not making the big decisions. So I don't see how this is a problem, but yet they're trying to attack him. They've slandered him. They've called him all kind of names, bigot, etc. And it's pretty frustrating. Let me take a quick moment, and I want to share something else. That Miss Kate was there last night. She had an opportunity to speak. So she said, I didn't get to finish my speech last night, but I have a solution. The group that teaches the Bible with parents' permission, take them off campus. Does use school resources, funds themselves? That's what they should do. Well, ironically, we have a group that we have been trying to help to do just that. The Christian ministry, I think Joe Keller has kind of been heading that up because they want to do, well, that's what they have in Carolina, down in York County. I was in first grade. We had Bible class right there in the first grade. Our first grade teacher taught it. I remember the public school. I wasn't in a private school. I was in the public school, Bethel Elementary. And I remember Miss McClure. We all learned John 3:16. And I remember once you could recite it from memory, you got a little tiny red. So excited when I got mine. My, how things have changed. By the time I was in high school, we were having to get permission to go to Bible school. And now, of course, you have to have permission, and they have to bus you off of the campus to another location to teach it. So we have really, John, if we tried to bring it back, though, now it looks like if we try to bring, Christianity back into the schools, and we also have to bring in, Wiccans and Buddhists and Muslims and all the rest of it. So I don't know if
I've
the answer
always,
is anymore.
when it comes to religion in the classroom, I'm not going to give a lecture here on the Constitution and, that whole idea of separation of church and state, which doesn't appear in the Constitution at all.
Right.
But I've always felt that in the public school, and now I taught in Catholic school for 22 years, and we did this. There needs to be classes called world religion. And what you do is you teach the tenets of every religion. And what that does is anytime that you can increase a child's knowledge, obviously you decrease the possibility of prejudice. So
Correct.
you come in, you teach the tenets of Christianity, you teach Judaism, you teach Buddhism, you teach Hinduism, you teach everything. And we even used to have, I was in a class in high school. And again, this was Catholic school, but still, it's not difficult to do. We had a Baptist Baptist pastor come in. We had a Methodist guy come in. We had a Presbyterian guy come in. We had a Muslim person come in. We had a Hindu person come in. We had a representative from just about every religion you can think of come into the class and speak about their religion. Tremendously informative, especially when you're 16, 17 years old and, you're forming these ideas based on what, of other religions, just making fun of people by the way they dress. But once you take a class like that, it changes your perspective on religion in general. And I think that's a good way to approach it, is that you should teach world religions like you teach world history. It should be the same thing. And that way you're introducing, most importantly, you're introducing to young people the idea that there is something bigger than you. And
Yeah.
that's something I think that is tremendously lacking in today's society. It's all about me, 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 me. That's what it's about. And that's because that's the way education is approached. But if you broaden their horizons and you introduce them to all of these things, you don't get preachy about it. You just teach it like a world history class. That would go a long way into solving all of this. And like I said, the underlying message is always there's something greater than you and that you need to serve someone other than yourself. And I think that's the message that's most lacking. And that might be an approach that all school systems need to take.
It's funny you should say that because when I taught at Christian Academy in Charlotte Christian Academy, we actually did teach that. I did teach that, and it was incorporated in the world history course that I
Yeah.
taught. I included, and exactly like you said, I didn't teach it as here's the Quran, it's the greatest, whatever. I just taught it. Look, here's the Hindu faith, here's the Buddhist faith. We talked about all those things, and kids could ask questions, and we talked about it from a professional,
Right.
not a religious standpoint. And I think that's what needs to happen. This idea that we can't have a discussion. Now, I didn't have anybody bringing in their prayer rugs or none of that was happening because that's not a. But yeah, you do need knowledge. You need to understand because when you get into the world, you're going to be confronted with these things, and if you've
Right.
never been taught it, then that's a problem. I know there was myself having graduated, high school in 88, and looking back when I got into college, there's a lot of things I was not taught in high school. One of the things I was not taught about, had never heard of it until I got into college, was internment camps.
Right.
The first time I learned about internment camps was in college. I was not taught this in high school, and I remember thinking, "Wow, how'd that get overlooked? I mean, that's a pretty big deal." And then I found out that some of the internment camps, this was when I was out in Hawaii, actually were there on Fort Island. And so I was actually able to talk to my students about it. We went out there and kind of looked at the area where they were located, because it's important that our kids know all of our history, the good, the bad, the
Oh,
ugly.
yeah.
You got to know it all. And that doesn't one of the greatest countries on the earth. I certainly do. When you look at the history of other nations, we are still far, far ahead. But it does not mean we are lacking for corruption and problems, because good gracious, look at what we have going on in our country today, from the Biden administration, Biden regime, what do you want to call it, to what's happening with our DOJ being politicized. It's unfathomable. If somebody had told me 10 years ago this would be a thing, I'd have said, you're talking about some other country. You're not talking about America. We are just a step away from being like Russia, in which the three ways that people tend to die over there is they fall out accidentally poisoned, or they die in plane crashes. So, we're not from that. And I think here, what we tend to have is a lot of suicides. We have a lot of suicides. So I don't know that we're that different, but we've got to continue to push back on this. And again, going back to the things I like about his songs is he's basically like, yeah, folks, we got a problem. We have a problem, and it's time that we stand up. So I'm happy to see that Elizabeth and others were there last night at the meeting. I was not able to attend. Last night was my son's 16th birthday, so I couldn't exactly not 16. That was a big day. Years ago, yesterday, I had a bouncing baby boy, and so I wanted to make sure I celebrated with my son. So that's why I was not
Well,
present. But
and it went pretty quick, right? Went pretty
it
quick.
did.
My guys are, what am I, 30 and 28. I mean, I don't
Yeah,
know where the time goes, but it just gets crazy. But what I was saying about framing the message, allowing the left to do that through the
yeah.
complicit media. When I saw the news story about the Ground Zero group, they came right out and said racist and homophobe and transphobe.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Right out, and that's how they framed the story. And
Yeah.
yet you don't give anybody a chance to say, hey, look, we're very welcoming here. Any good journalist would read the mission statement. Give both sides. Okay, you this side, you're saying that the group is transphobic and homophobic, but here's their mission statement. You have to give
Yeah.
both sides. You never get that from the media. I've said this
No, of course
for
not.
decades. I've said this for decades. The biggest problem we have in this country, and the most dangerous thing we have, is in complicit media, because it's basically the communications arm of the left. That's all it is. And it's very
Yeah.
hard to combat. And you know what? It's the one good thing about the internet, is that we can combat it through other means. Because years ago, they did it more subtly, but we couldn't combat it. There was no way to combat it. Now, there's a lot of ways you can get around it. I mean, and you see ratings on regular television are awful. Awful. There's things all the time. You'll see CNN get 600,000 people. 600,000 people out of what? Out of 330 million?
Exactly.
I mean,
let's say 300 million that are actually old enough to watch TV. We'll say that. That's all
my
they can get.
gosh.
600,000.
You get 600,000. And you got to compare that to like radio. Remember years ago? Oh, radio's dead. Radio's dead.
Yeah.
Rush Limbaugh used to get 18 million.
Video kill the radio.
Yeah, right. Rush Limbaugh would get 18 million listeners on an average day. 18 million, which now on TV would be just mind-boggling. 18 million people. Nobody gets anything near that. So it's definitely changed. At least we have a way around it, but very often it's not enough, because too many people are just captive to what Steve Bannon calls TV for stupid people. That's what he says.
Well, it's funny. I went to a training this week. It was a conservative institute, and I attended that, and it was a great training. A lot of the information was really very valuable, and I wish I had known this information prior to my run for county council. Having said that, there were still some areas that I felt like they needed to update, and this kind of plays right into that. One of the things was different ways to. And he used the word blogging, and I laughed out loud. I was like, blogging? Like, dude, nobody's blogged since 2000. What? Get with the times. To that end, I would say I think they've done some studies here recently, and I do not watch the news. Sometimes if I'm able to be awake at 10 o'clock, I'll flip over and watch Gutfeld just because I think it's funny at 10. But that's it. I don't watch anything else. When Tucker left, I used to watch Tucker and then maybe Gutfeld. I don't watch anything now, period. Nothing. I don't watch Newsmax. I don't watch One American News, Fox. No, I listen to podcasts, and I listen to a variety of podcasts. It's way more. The other thing, you have the A block, the B block, the C block. So you get like 15 minutes. You don't really even get into details about any particular topic. They just scratch the surface. I don't like that. I've never liked that. I much prefer the Joe Rogan tactic, where he's there 3 hours, and but only a candidate full of sound bites, you are going to crash and burn, because he's going to have you there. You're going to run out of your sound bites, your little talking bits in the first hour. And then he's going to like really grind you into the dirt with questions, because he's going to keep asking and asking and asking and digging and digging and digging. So you better have something to say and be very telling. So that's what I like. I like the fact that you can listen to a Ben Shapiro, you can listen to a Dan Bongino, a Glenn Beck, Steve Bannon. These are folks you can listen to. Now, and they do have video as well. You can go find them on Rumble, YouTube, some other places, mostly Rumble now, because I think YouTube has become such a communist hack job place. But anyway, you can do all of that and listen to them. But I put it on in my car when I'm at work. I just listen to it. It's really fascinating. They go in depth on these discussions, and then they leave you with, okay, let me research what book he said that came from. Let me research this awful. And I like that a whole lot more than the old talking heads on TV. Oh, we've got a very important topic. It's so important, we're going to commit exactly 10 minutes to talking about it before we switch over to talk about something else. I mean, am I wrong, John?
No, and I think that there are more and more and more people who are taking the approach that you're taking. And I point to, and again, not that I'm endorsing him, but I point to Bobby Kennedy Jr., because Bobby Kennedy's he's blacked out of the media. He's pretty much been blacked out. You'll see him here and there, but obviously Democrat outlets are not going to let him on. They're not. He's a threat to what they have going on. So what does he do? If you follow him, he's on different podcasts every day. I mean, he's on some podcasts that you never even heard of. He is hitting the podcast circuit as hard as he can, because he knows, and his people know, that he's not going, no matter what he does, pretty much, unless he talks about the assassination of his uncle and his father, he doesn't get on TV, and that's done purposefully. So he's gone around to reach all of the voters like you, not that he's going to get you, but he's gone
Right.
around doing all the podcasts. And guess what? It doesn't matter if it's a hard right podcast, a hard left podcast, or a moderate podcast. He's going on and answering questions from everybody, all sides. And one thing about him is he has very honest discussions with people. He's very upfront. He's got nothing to hide, but he is reaching an audience that the mainstream Republicans and Democrats are ignoring, and that audience is growing. So I think, Shannon, you're onto something there, and so is his campaign. Very, very smart what he's doing.
Side of that, yeah, Vivek
Oh yeah,
Ramaswamy is doing the same thing. He's hitting all the podcasts. DeSantis is
and
starting to do the same thing.
they
I
have
don't think
very
you'll see that from
interesting.
Trump, though.
No, and they have
Yeah.
very. It's funny you mentioned Vivek. He and RFK Jr. are taking very similar approaches. Vivek gets a bit more. He gets more airtime because they're not blacking him out.
Right.
But yeah, and the amazing thing is their message is very similar, except on social issues. On social issues. I mean, that's the difference with Bobby Kennedy. He comes right out and says, "Look, I'm a Kennedy Democrat. You know, he's socially liberal on most things, but by and large, he's against the corporatocracy, if you want to call it that. You know, the aristocracy that's running the country. He hates that. The illegal marriage between corporation and the government. He despises that. And
crony capitalism.
And Vivek says the same thing. It's just that they're coming at it from different points of view. And I think one thing that we have to keep an eye on, and I know the Democrats are keeping an eye on, is that there was a poll come out the other day in New Hampshire. Bobby Kennedy's up to 30%. Bobby Kennedy could win in New Hampshire because he's a Massachusetts guy. And New Hampshire, look, I mean, I love New Hampshire, live free or die. I know all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But the Kennedys are wildly popular up there. And they're free thinkers. They are free thinkers. So there's a possibility.
What Iowa? It's a caucus. So, I mean, he could win that too.
Yeah, but if he wins in New Hampshire,
I
still think that Biden's not going to be on the ticket. That's just my
I agree.
I think he's done.
That's what the guy who led the training this weekend said the same thing. And
he can't. They can't hide him in the basement that much. This is a different animal. They can't hide him in the basement. They can bring out COVID as much as they want. They're not going to be able to hide him. They're just not. I said this several months ago that I thought by September 15th Biden would be out, and I'm sticking to it because if you look at the things that have been leaking out the last couple of days, and then all of a sudden critical pieces from NBC, critical pieces from the Times, critical pieces from CNN about Biden and the corruption. All of a sudden, it's a story. Meanwhile, Giuliani's been talking about it since 2019. All the information that's coming out now about Shokin, about all those people over and everything that went on with Burisma, Giuliani laid that out in 2019. And then they attacked who? Him.
Yeah.
That's what they do. They attacked him. He's had the receipts since 2019. And they, of course, they say, he's old, he's crazy, he's a drunk, he's nuts, he's senile, he's whatever he is. But this is not news. But all of a sudden, the Times is writing about it. CNN's doing stories about it. MSNBC hasn't gone down that hole yet, and I don't think they ever will. They'll probably try to. I think the next move is they have to somehow prop up Vice President Harris. They have to somehow get her in, try to get. Oh, I agree. That's a big task.
Actually, they did it. I think Ben Shapiro called it the 27th reboot of Vice President.
They have to somehow give her something that makes her look somewhat deep. It's going to be tough. But look, you know what? They got Joe Biden elected from his basement. They can prop up Kamala Harris for 9 months. I mean, that's pretty much the way I think about it. And then, of course, Newsom, who is, if you call central casting, you say, send us the president. That's the guy they're going to send you. I mean, he's horrible, but that's the guy they're going to send you.
Yeah.
He is going to Tennessee.
Communist.
Yeah. He's being hosted in Tennessee now. And he's going to launch his campaign without launching his campaign, which is.
Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders is out there making rounds. Listen, here's the thing. Bernie Sanders and Robert Kennedy Jr. remind me of each other in that they're very honest. Bernie, he doesn't hide the fact that he's a socialist, aka communist. He's
from the beginning
very open about it. The matter is, you and I both know this. The Democrats definitely thwarted him.
Twice.
Exactly. With Hillary, and you're absolutely. When Clyburn here in South Carolina made the decision to get behind Joe Biden and push him over the top, primary in South Carolina. That was the only reason that Bernie Sanders didn't win. Otherwise, Joe Biden is not going to be the president. He's not the nominee. Bernie Sanders is the nominee, and he goes on, and I think he loses to Trump without any question. But he had the young voter base. And so there's rumors out the ground game because he sees what you and I see, that Joe Biden is not going to be the Democratic nominee. He's just not going to be. They're going to get rid of him either mid-September or 1st of October. I don't think it goes much beyond the 10th of October. Then they're like, he's out of here. So we'll see.
I think
I agree with you. I think everybody.
Bernie's biggest uphill battle now is that, Bernie's going to be 83.
Yeah,
and
but at least he's still got all his wits about.
Oh yeah, but people have watched Biden.
Yeah.
They've watched Biden fail. I mean, he didn't have a good head start anyway, but they've watched him fail mentally and physically. Nobody's going to want to go down the octogenarian road again. I just don't think so. They're going to want to see people that are younger, more vigorous. I think, especially on the Democrat side. It's not going to be Joe Biden. There's no way. There's no way.
Imagine it. Yeah.
But how they handle getting him out of the way, 25th Amendment, they could do that. Certainly. It would also get him off the hook for all the criminal charges that are coming.
Yeah.
Because if he gets out, they could pardon him.
Not only that, I think back to Ronald Reagan in his second term. You remember the Iran-Contra affair when they were asking him questions, and he said, "I don't recall." And at first, he's lying. It turns out he actually just didn't recall because he had at that time had already developed Alzheimer's, and it wasn't publicly made, known to everybody until after he was out of office. So there's a good chance that they could probably say, Biden's mental acumen has slipped, and therefore 25th Amendment, whatever. I don't know how they're going to firmly believe that you're right and that we're not the only ones. There's a lot of people saying this, that there's just no way that it can be him. There has to be somebody else. So it'll be very interesting to see how they prop up Kamala Harris or how they try to polish off the turd that is
right.
Gavin Newsom from out there. It'll be interesting.
And then the other thing that the Democrats are watching, of course, is polling. And in a lot of polls on the national level, Trump's ahead of Biden. Not by much, but, it's within the margin of error. But the fact that Trump's been indicted 4 times and Trump's beating Biden tells them that it can't be Biden. You can't take that chance, because if they're not successful getting Trump out of the way, they just can't take that chance. There's no way, because then Biden can't debate. They can't hide him again. This isn't COVID. They can't hide him again. And if they wheel COVID out again, which they're going to do, if they wheel it out, I would say that the percentage of people who are going to say, "Oh no, not this time," is very large. There weren't many of us who last time said, "Hey, look, I'm not going down that road." Now I think people have seen enough. They say, "You know what? Forget it." They lied to us about everything. About everything. So
yeah, I'm going to make a prediction. My mother-in-law was here. She and her boyfriend were here from California. To be an independent, but she very much talks all the Democratic talking points, and she has Trump derangement, can't stand the man. And then her boyfriend Nando is a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat. So we were discussing the 14th Amendment and the third help me out here article, and it basically says if a person is found to have been involved in insurrection or treason, they can be blocked from running for office.
Right.
So here's my prediction. As I said, they're going to find him guilty of one or maybe all 4 of these. Doesn't matter whether, understand, folks, I'm not saying he is guilty. I'm saying they're going to find him guilty. And as soon as they do that, because I think now the first one is set for March 4th to start.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So they're going to March, April, May. They're going to try to wrap that up before the January or for the June primary, if you will.
Well, they're all right before Super Tuesday.
Right.
The dates of the trials.
So what they're going to do is the Democratic states, the states run by Democrats, are going to say, we're not even putting him on a ballot. He will not be allowed on the ballot. And, Trump will have to scramble to try to do something with that. But if they do it in such a way that they can block it, like I said, the day he's screwed. And they know it.
Yeah, it'll just tie.
Dirty.
Yeah,
that's what I think they're going to do.
It'll tie it up more so in the courts, because there's a couple.
The courts have been so helpful to us.
Oh, I know, and it'll tie it. Yeah, it'll even tie it up even more. First of all, the Constitution is very clear. there are only a handful of
I don't think that's
qualifications.
ever
You
stopped
have to
them.
be about becoming the president. You have to be a natural
Yeah.
born citizen, which they
Mhm.
never defined, by the way. We'll get that's an
Right.
argument for a whole nother time. You have to be lived in the United States for the last 15 years, and
Mhm.
you have to be over 35. And they did that on purpose. They kept the qualifications to a minimum. It doesn't say anything about crimes. It doesn't say anything about anything. As far as the 14th Amendment is concerned, I saw Alan Dershowitz speak about this many times. He says, and if you look at the writings, he's probably right.
Yeah.
That whole idea of insurrectionists and everything, that was to prohibit members of the Confederate government for holding the presidency. And that was it. It didn't have to do with future presidents. It didn't override Article 2 of the Constitution, which spells out the qualifications. That had to do with Reconstruction and people from the South being elected to high positions in the United States government, people who were considered, quote unquote, traitors. That's why they put that in there. Professor Dershowitz was very clear about it. He said it has nothing to do with future presidents. The other part of this is, if Speaker McCarthy would ever keep his word and release all of the January 6th tapes, you would know that that was not an insurrection.
Yeah.
And yet Speaker
Yeah.
McCarthy has not released the tapes, even though he said he would release the tapes. He released a
Mhm.
few, but he didn't release all, not even close.
Right.
That was
Right.
not, and that, I mean, let's put it this way. If President Trump was planning an insurrection, you think that's what it would have looked like?
Right.
A bunch of people
I didn't
taking
get that
selfies in the
memo. I was told to come, but I
No.
certainly didn't, wasn't told
I
that
mean,
this administration.
people have, big crowd, million people taking selfies, listening to speeches. And then, if you want to peacefully and patriotically walk over to the Capitol, let's do that. But if you don't, have a great day.
Let me
Uh,
read the 14th Amendment, Section 3 that they're talking about, and it's titled Disqualification from Holding Office. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president, vice president, or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state, who, having previously taken an oath as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature or as an executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by vote of each house, remove such disability. What they're going to say is, they're going to say, well, it was a rebellion or insurrection, whatever
please,
they're going to call it. And they're going to say, he
please.
helped. I'm telling you, I mean, I just see the crap they're going to
Oh
say. I
yeah,
mean,
it's
they don't
exactly what it
they
is. And
don't
that's
read
what
the
yes,
Constitution anyway. They're
no.
violating it every day. So
And that's what the January 6th cases are all about. That's why those
yeah.
people are still in prison. That's why a lot of those people, here's the other thing too. And I'm sure that we'll make this point.
Then they charged
You
one
have
guy with
people,
insurrection. I think it's just one.
yeah,
Yeah.
you have people in jail there that haven't gotten to court yet. And
Yeah.
you're gonna rush Trump's trial 6 months?
See, that violates something in the Constitution. Have they even been charged? I don't think
You
some of them
think
have been
so?
charged.
Oh,
Oh,
it's
it's
unbelievable.
sad.
Yeah, they haven't even been. Yeah, and that's something that needs to be addressed as well. But they're all doing that. It's all part of the show. But again, Speaker McCarthy, who is not my favorite by far, I
Mhm.
was against him being the speaker again anyway. He said he was going to release
Yep.
11,000 hours of tapes. Let's see them. Let's see the tapes. We want to see the
Well, then he
tapes.
gave them to
And we
Tucker
want to find.
Carlson, and then Tucker. That's why Tucker ended up getting kicked off, more or
But
less.
he didn't get a lot of
Yeah.
it. He got some
Oh,
of it. He didn't get
okay.
all of it. And then the other part of that is what about the pipe bomber? That's the key to
Yeah.
this whole thing. The pipe bomb outside Democrat headquarters, where
You can't figure
Vice
it out.
President Harris just happened to be and nobody found it. They don't
I
know who
know, they
that guy
can't figure
was.
it
That's
out.
such a nonsense. They could find a needle in a
Yeah.
haystack. They found grandmas from Colorado who were taking selfies in the Capitol and
Yes.
threw them in jail, but they
Yes.
can't find this guy.
Right.
Please, the FBI
Yeah.
is the FBI. Look, the top of the FBI is a disgrace. The top. I mean, I'm sure there's good agents out there. They're working hard. They're putting their lives on the line every day, and they're in a tough spot. They're in a tough spot. But the top, the fish rots.
I'm
The
with
fish
Dan
rots from the head.
Bongino on that, John. I'm going to disagree with you. At this point in time, Dan said, in the beginning, he could see sticking with it. He goes, but now there are some agents who have said, I'm done. I can't stay in
Oh
this
yeah,
nonsense anymore. So they walked away. At this point in time, if you're still a part of the FBI, shame on you. Get out of there. Just bail. I mean, that should be a massive walkout protest. You should simply say, I'm not going to be a part of this corruption anymore, because guess what? anybody to order in the box ceases. So that's the way I see it. They ought to all get together and have a big union walkout, if you will. They'll strike for other things. So how about we strike for the Constitution being violated every single day? Not once in a while, every day.
And in a perfect world, I think they would do that. But you know this, if you got 18, 20, 22 years invested in there, you got a mortgage, you got 3 kids, you got one in college, and this is your livelihood, and you're going to walk away from that job, walk away from your pension, walk away from your medical coverage, and then go try to find a job. It's pretty tough to do. And I think there's some, there are some people that
I do it.
There are some people.
Our founders did.
Yeah, but there's a lot that won't, and they just don't think that they can do it.
Because
it's an impossible spot to be in. It's like,
yeah,
it's like being a police officer in New York City. There's a lot of guys up there that I taught that are on the police department that have gone up the ranks, and they're in an impossible spot. They have 15 years on a job. You have 5 years to go before you get your pension. You have all that time invested in there. You have a mortgage. You got kids. You're doing everything you can do. You cannot walk away from that job. You just have to stay and fight the good fight. It's hard to do. I understand it's a terrible choice to make. So they're sticking it out, and they're enforcing the law, and they're putting their lives on the line. It's a different animal, because let's face it, I don't think the fish is rotting from the top there. I mean, you have people, the mayor's a disaster, but you have people in law enforcement at the top that are really trying to do their jobs, but the parameters have been tightened so much that they can't do their job. So unfortunately, you have to stand back and watch a lot of nonsense.
I agree. Speaking of nonsense, if you live
nice segue. I like that. Speaking of nonsense.
If you live in the Forest Brick, it's one of these little baggies in your yard. Sometimes it has rice in it to hold the paper down. Sometimes it has beans or dirt or wood chips or whatever. I'll just take a couple things out. This is there's some Nazi organization that is trying their best to this is the most anti-Semitic. So Antifa is Jewish. Says Antifa is Jewish militia. Attacks on Antifa are attacks on Jews. So while I don't support Antifa at all, I don't know that I buy that. And I'm not even going to show you the backside of that because it's so vulgar. So we'll show you that. And then the next little piece of information that comes in this little bag along with the rice, I don't know what that's all about. But anyway, it says every single aspect of the LGBTQ plus movement is Jewish. So I'm gonna call up some of my and say, I didn't know you were Jewish. What? When did you become Jewish? And I know that several of them, Deb and Kim and Lisa and Brenda and many others, are going to say, what? That's utter nonsense. They've got it's so anyway, this has been showing up yards here in my neighborhood for about a month now, and I finally got mine. And then on the back side, it talks about them being vampires and that. Look, this kind of hatred does not have any place in society. And I would have thought, John, that long ago we were done with that sort of rhetoric, but ugly head again. Well, so just be aware, if it hasn't come to your neighborhood yet, it's coming to your neighborhood, and it looks something like this. So,
well, there are, I'll be politically incorrect here, there are nut jobs on every side.
Yes.
Right? Every side has them. And the one thing, and I think that this is a point that always needs to be made. When your media is corrupted and they control the message, it creates conspiracies.
Yep.
Conspiracy after conspiracy after conspiracy. And what that allows to happen is you get those nut jobs who create these conspiracies, and then they go off on these tangents, and they're going to use it to go after the group that they despise in the first place. And all it does, honestly, is give them more oxygen. It gives them more oxygen. If the news would just report the facts, you would have far fewer conspiracies, and you would have far fewer people going down these rabbit holes. And like I said, some of these people are mentally imbalanced anyway, so it gives them more of an opportunity to do it. And the straighter you are with the facts, the fewer conspiracies you have. And that's why we have so many conspiracies now. But the people who are on the fringe, the people who are imbalanced, they're going to take that and run with it, and they're going to connect dots that don't exist. Yeah. They're just going to make up their own dots. And that's been going on forever.
Yeah, I know. Elizabeth just asked me, where does the QR code direct you to? And I told her, I said, like, I'm afraid to click on it because I don't want to get kind of spam or who knows what you get. So
Yeah, or
I,
have the FBI telling you that you're part of it because
right,
you
yeah,
clicked on it.
yeah.
Right.
Hello,
Exactly
we're
right.
here to take you. All your guns are coming with us. So yeah, and I mean, as I said, this has been going on in my neighborhood for about a month, and I was seeing it on the neighborhood posts. Don't pick this up. This is garbage. Throw it in the trash. Don't let your kids see it. And I hadn't gotten one. And so this morning, my husband came and he goes, they finally picked us. And I was like, oh, great. So now I have it. And definitely thought it was. If it hasn't happened in your neighborhood, it's probably just a matter of time before they start coming. I don't think it's someone who lives here because, as I understand, someone caught a car on their Ring camera. And, they basically pull up, throw it
Mhm.
out the window of the car into the driveway, and then go to the next door and throw it out the window. That's kind of what they're doing. So, um, they put it in this little Ziploc bag damage. So they're putting money into it because it's not cheap. It's not cheap to buy those bags and print out those because that's color. They're printing paper. So I always think if you spent your time doing something beneficial to society, how much more could you get done? You know, all this time to figure out how to cheat deal. And if they put that much effort into doing something honest, we probably would have a cure for cancer at this point in time. We have major problems across the country. We're in a time where every election is the most important election because the next election, last election. And so it starts to sound a little bit um, repetitious or phony, but it's the truth. I mean, this next election is critical. It is vitally important. And I'm not just talking about the presidential election. I'm talking about the state, local. It's vitally important that you be an active participant in what's going on in our electoral process. To that end, folks need to know that yes, the presidential primary in South Carolina is February 24th. So probably January, certainly the first of Nevada. It's the January 1st of February.
But it's not January. It's not. Well,
It's,
it's
it's,
not early in January. It's right
yeah,
before
so
the South Carolina one. Right.
yeah, I was it's either the end of January or first. Anyway, they're like 2 weeks, so I guess it would have to have been like the 6th or
Right.
7th of January.
Right.
So there are 2 weeks after that primary where there's nothing until the 24th when South Carolina has its primary. So we are going to be inundated with political ads, whatever, for the various candidates. It is going to be almost. I'm glad I don't watch TV anymore because I don't have to see any of it. And I just listen to, like I said, I don't even listen to radio. I listen to podcasts. That's all I listen to. And I read a lot. And I highly encourage you, if you haven't been reading, you need to read. Get the book by Carol Roth. You will own nothing and like it. What I love about her book is she spends the first portions of the book talking about what's happening so that you're aware of it, she spends the last part of the book telling you these are the steps you need to take to prevent yourself and others from falling prey to this new world order. So read the book. Don't skip to the end. Just read that. Read the whole book, because if you just skip to the end and you see what she suggests that you do, it doesn't make sense to you because you're like, what? Talking about. Well, you have to read what she's talking about that you need to do to counter it. So read the book. It is absolutely critical that you do so. Then the next book you should read is The Naked Capitalist, and then follow that by The Naked Communist and The Naked Socialist. Those 4 books are going to give you so much information, just in the United States, but what's happening in the world. You are not going to be. You will be changed. It will change you. I read those books while I was in Europe. And it's a long flight there and a lot of travel time in between. And then the time that I spent in the room or whatever, Matt drove everywhere. I didn't drive. So I was able to read 3 books, and it's really changed my perspective on how to move forward with dealing with what's happening. And you think, well, that's just on the national level. But look, folks, this is right here at home. We have problems here at home. To that end, I mean, please understand that the primary in February is a presidential primary. It's not the primary for House or state Senate or any of those things. That happens in June. I think it's June 7th. I want to say, I might be wrong, but I think it's the 7th of June. So we have a desperate need for strong conservative candidates to run for office. Because right now We've said it before on this page many, many times. We have no conservative representation in Horry County. The Freedom Caucus, which is a group bred out of the Freedom Caucus in the U.S. House, now exists. I think there's 11 states in their legislative bodies, and South Carolina is one of those. One of the things I found really interesting at this meeting this weekend was the discussion was there's about 17. We have 17 Freedom Caucus members now. They kind of got rid of a couple of them. We have a supermajority. And you think on the one hand, John, you and I have talked about this a lot. You call them squishy Republicans. We have a lot of squishy Republicans in this supermajority. And the point was made, and it was brilliant. And this is gonna shake you to your core, folks. But the point was made: if we had 55 Democrats, we'd still have the majority, but we wouldn't have a supermajority. But what would change right now, because they have a supermajority, they not only ignored them, they kicked them out of the Republican caucus because they didn't need them. If we had 55 Democrats, the Freedom Caucus would actually have more power than they do now with a supermajority in the Republican. Look at what happened in the U.S. Congress, because they had such a the Freedom Caucus, 5 people basically held up the nomination for Speaker.
Sometimes, they got a lot in return. They got a lot in return, although they didn't get enough. I mean, let's face it. What's going on now with the with the continuing resolution the budget to borrow more money.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think he should have brought the House back last week and said, let's get this impeachment rolling. I mean, what are you waiting for? He's talking about mid-October. Joe Biden is a threat to this country.
Yes.
Period. National security wise, he's a threat. It's been established. Mm-hmm. There's no doubt here. All right. He and his family took in. If you saw Nancy Mace the other day, and I have to give credit to Nancy Mace. She's not, she's not Trump's biggest supporter. She's in a district that she would say it's not a red district, it's not a blue district. It's very down the middle, that district that she serves.
It's purple.
But she has been on top of this. And she was on the other day on television saying that the Bidens, they have evidence, and she can't get into a lot of it because it hasn't been released yet, bank records, et cetera, that the Biden family is taking in well over $50 million that they know of. They haven't even got to half of it. Well over $50 million. So what are you waiting for? I mean, they dialed up this Trump impeachment. They impeached him before they had the articles, which is what they did to Andrew Johnson. It's the same nonsense. They impeached him before they had the articles. 2 weeks left in office, and they impeached him. Right, they impeached him. Right, and a lot of Republicans were in on that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and it earned some of them the door, like Tom Rice. Right, it earned them the door as well as it should have, because again, one of the big issues about those 2 impeachments: 1, they were fake, but 2, they bastardized the process. Now people, if you go and impeach Biden, go, oh, this again? Well, this again, yeah, except this guy sold the country out for $50 million. I mean, it's a big difference. We know everything in the first impeachment was a lie.
Yeah.
And we know that we've never seen what happened on January 6th, ever. We haven't seen it yet. Yeah. We've seen dribs and drabs. And like I said, there's 11,000 hours of tape that we still haven't seen. Well, let's see it. But I mean, it's just a disaster where we are. As far as the South Carolina primaries, et cetera, I saw an article yesterday that the Koch brothers have a PAC with $70 million that a lot of which they're gonna put
Americans for Prosperity.
Yeah, they're gonna put into South Carolina, and they are virulent anti-Trumpers, big time.
Yeah,
and because all the oligarchs are. They all hate him because he's over the target. He doesn't want to play that. He exposed all of them. Where their money goes, how they've gotten involved in Ukraine, the fact that all this money is going to Ukraine and then it's coming back and going to the defense industries. I mean, they're all over that stuff. But they're going to try to bury Trump here. I don't think they could spend enough money. The other problem is, you would think that groups like the Koch brothers and all of these big PACs, you would think that they would realize that the more shade that you throw at Trump, the more popular he gets. If you just continue to rip him up, everybody goes, oh, wait a minute, these people don't like Trump? Even people that couldn't stand Trump are now like, oh, wait a minute, this has gone way, way, way too far. Way too far. Because what they see is their cities are falling apart. Murderers are being let out of jail on no bail, right? You've seen people attacked in cities, video attacks with hammers, with baseball bats, people going into stores and just looting like crazy. And they let these people out of jail right away, and then they never go to court. And then you're going to indict Trump and bring him into trial in 6 months on 4 different counts. Everybody goes, hold on, this is upside down. This is crazy world. And I think people have had enough of it. And there's a whole lot of people, and it proves it. You see the polls going up. It's insane. You indict him, he gets $7 million in 2 days. Just they taken the wrong tact. And I said this from the beginning. If the left was smart and they actually thought this through and they didn't continually act on emotions like the left always does, they would have paid Trump no mind once he was out of office. They just would have, if they just left him alone and blacked him out like they blacked out Bobby Kennedy Jr., guess what? You wouldn't be having this issue right now. He would never have gotten the traction that he's getting. He just wouldn't. He could try to stay relevant, but if you're not really giving him the play, he wouldn't be as relevant as he is. And now you just look, you're creating a monster. I mean, people don't like him.
Well, they like it because here's why the media likes Trump, because he is a draw. People will watch it, and they need their numbers because, man, like you said, 600,000 people watching. But they put Trump on, everybody's watching, and they know that. So he's good for their pocketbooks. So they cut their nose off to spite their face.
Every time.
Oh, we gave him, but we got to put him on because he brings in money. But let me draw this back to South Carolina, particularly here in Horry County. But not just 15 Freedom Caucus members in the state of South Carolina. Please, I don't care where you live, call your representative, call your state representative. And if they're not a member of the Freedom Caucus and they're a Republican, ask them why they're not a member. Ask them why they don't believe in constitutional conservatism. Ask them why they don't believe in limited. Ask them why. Put them on the spot, and don't let them obfuscate. Oh, well, I have to make these compromises. I have to do. Listen, one of the things that we talked about this weekend was that the Democrats do not compromise. They come out and they say, we want the moon. And then we can only give them like halfway there. Come out, they say, we want more. And then they get the moon. That's what they do. I mean, Nikki Haley came out on the stage during a debate and she said, listen, we're going about this all wrong. Instead of asking for everything, total abortion ban, we need to go out here and start from this end and work backwards. We need to say, okay, you can't abort at full term and then work our way backwards. No, Nikki, That's not what we need to do. We need to say, we don't believe that murdering babies is the right choice. That's what we need to do. And until we recognize that we have to use the same tactics that the Democrats do, which is ask for the world, you'll get a lot more than you expect. Don't compromise. Stop compromising with evil. If you compromise with evil, it's just evil.
Yeah.
There's no degrees. There's no little bit of evil, slightly evil. It's evil.
That's the difference between Republicans and Democrats. It really is. And to that point, I can guarantee you this. If the shoe were on the other foot and Joe Biden was in Donald Trump's spot and the Republicans were using lawfare to try to get him out of office and doing everything they could to get him out of office, but there would be no Democrat primary. They wouldn't. You wouldn't have a Democrat debate of 8 people trying to take the president out. Yeah, I'm telling you, it wouldn't happen. But Republicans, there's such a great divide in the Republican Party. The same divide exists in the Democrat Party. It's just that the Democrats are afraid. The Democrats who want to speak up are afraid to do so. There's a split. The Democrat Party is split. There's a whole lot of people in there who are Democrats who are, we'll call them Kennedy Democrats. There are a lot of people who are socially liberal that think what's going on is crazy, but they're afraid to stand up and say so. That's the difference. The Republicans admit they're split. The Democrats never admit they're split, and that's why they're so difficult to deal with. Because like you said, they stick together no matter what. They stick together. Yeah, and a lot of it's fear, but they stick together. No, they don't.
And if you want to know where the base their theories are, folks, again, John, I'm sure you've read it too, Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. Please go read that book. Read it.
That's Obama.
Understand it. Read it again. And that's another thing. Let's talk about Vivek one more time before we go. We got about a minute or two before we wrap up. But I found it very interesting that Vivek basically took a lot of Obama's, massaged him a little bit, made him his own. And I thought, on the one hand, he gets it. He sees, Obama understood technology. He understood how to use social media. Yeah. So he's trying to do the same thing. But if you're going to find somebody that you can emulate, please don't let it be the guy who really led us into what is now a spiraling out of control fiasco.
Yeah, and he
not doing so bad until Obama got elected.
They're still running the show. I think
Yeah,
that whole
I think
group,
so
he
too.
and Susan Rice, and they're all
Yeah,
still running the show. It's not Joe.
I
Joe's
agree.
not smart enough to be the president. He's just
Yeah.
not. And guess what? He never was.
Correct, correct.
He's the ultimate empty suit. He really was. You could push him any way you want, and he
Yep,
wasn't even a good speaker when he was speaking. He's not
that's
speaking
true.
now.
Absolutely. Well, folks, that is bringing us to the end of our hour. Thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, please reach out to your state and House members and state Senate members and pressure them to find out where they really stand on the issues. Don't just vote R because you think they're Republican, because as John says, they're most likely squishy Republicans. That's all I got. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Until then, Godspeed. God bless. We'll see you next time.